morning guys, welcome back to my channel. It is raining a lot outside, so I apologize for the background sound. Hopefully you can still hear me okay. I wanted to film a tutorial today for a new journal project, like a junk journal project of a very simple journal that you can make. And it's different in the way that it opened. It started with an idea, I created a prototype, and then I've created two versions so far of the project. Basically the idea was that I wanted to make a book, a journal, but it could also be considered a folio or like a lap book. You can use it as a junk journal, you can use it as a regular writing journal, you can use it as a photo album, a sketchbook, whatever you want basically. But the idea is that the journal opens up differently to your traditional book. You would have your cover. This was my prototype, so I just created this prototype with some craft paper. The idea is that the journal is going to open up in a non-traditional way, and it's just basically going to be like a big fold out journal. This was kind of the layout that I came up with for the first one that I made, and this was just to wrap my head around the concept. So I just used some washi tape to attach everything together. But basically this would be your cover piece, and then your pages are going to fold out and you're going to have something that becomes really interactive and something that's just non-traditional and can be used in lots of different fun ways, but it still folds all the way back up into like a traditional looking book. And this one I've actually added quite a bit inside, like I've added lots of extra pockets and stuff inside, and it's a lot more finished. And I wanted to do one that felt really vintage. So this one opens up the exact same way as the prototype, but the difference is that I've gone ahead and I've added lots of different pockets and things to each page. So it opens out like this. I think I'm going to struggle actually to fit it in the frame. And then it opens down this way and basically just creates a book that goes on and on and on. I think this is a really fun project, or like a different take on a lap book or a folio. And this is completely a no-sew binding as well, so it's a really simple beginner project. And another thing is you don't have to open out every single element of the book to get to the page you want to work on. So you could have it open sort of just like this if you're working on these pages. You can open it up in different ways to get to different pages, so the whole thing doesn't have to necessarily be open at once. So that was my more finished version, which I'll show you a little bit better shortly. And then I wanted to make another very simple version, and this one I just did completely plain papers. So I think this one would be best used as like a sketchbook or an art journal that opens up, and this one opens up slightly differently as well. So for this one I just used art paper, which I tea dyed, and a cardboard cover for the cover of the book. And then this one opens up just a little bit differently, so it opens this way and it opens this way. You can create a book that opens out in so many different ways, because all it takes is changing up one of the ways that it opens, and then you've got a different project. So it's completely up to you how you want to make it, how you want it to open out. Where you can take little like Polaroid pictures, like little Instax Polaroid pictures, and you can glue them on each square, or you could put pockets on some of these rectangles to create a really like interactive pocketbook. Or you could do painting in each rectangle. You could even create an artwork that kind of changes but continues on through each square, if that makes sense. You could do art journaling, you could do written journaling, you could do whatever you want, but I just thought this was a really fun and different idea to try. So if you are feeling a bit stuck in a creative rut and you want to try a different project that's pretty quick and pretty easy, then stick around, because I'm going to teach you how to make your own version of these in this video. So for this tutorial I'm going to show you how I made the layout of this book. So your book, if you follow this tutorial exactly, you will make a book that opens out the exact same way. And then at the end of the tutorial, after we formed the structure of our book, I'll come back to this book and I'll show you all of the extra things that I added. So just to give you some different ideas of things that you can add to yours. So all you really need for this project is paper and glue. You can make one of these journals just with paper and glue. Everything else that we add or can add is optional. So paper and glue, scissors, just your very, very basic supplies. There are so many different variations that you can consider when you're making this project. So for example, obviously the size is one variation you can consider. So just here I've created 2 different sizes, but you could create one that's much bigger. You could create one that's much smaller. Another variation obviously is the paper that you choose to use for the base of your pages. In this tutorial, I'm just going to use all the same plain tea-dyed paper for my pages. But if you wanted to, just like with a junk journal, you can go and select papers from all different places and you can use those. And that's actually what I did for this book. So the base pages that I used were a combination of vintage papers, like music paper pages and scrapbook papers. Whereas with this one, I just used all plain art paper, and that's what I'm going to be doing here as well. So you can really make this anything that you want. You can make it suitable for any type of use that you want. I've got a couple sheets of tea-dyed paper here just so that I would have paper ready to go. And for the cover, I'm going to use card again for the cover. So this is a scrap of manila folder, and you could use just paper as your cover if that's all you have, but I think it's a good idea to have something that's slightly heavier than the pages for your cover. And I'm using this scrap, so I'm going to make mine pretty small again just because this is what I have. I'm just going to fold this and then create my cover, which will determine the size of my book. One thing I will say is your cover piece should be a little bit bigger than your pages. So you want to give yourself a little bit of extra room on the cover so that when you fold your pages in, they're going to sit inside and they're going to fit inside the cover. Basically, you want to make your cover piece a little bit taller and a little bit wider than your pages. So for example, if you're making yours the exact same as mine, I've made my cover piece about 3.5 inches wide by about 4.5 inches tall. So then I'm going to make my page size about 3 by 4 inches. So quite small for the purpose of this tutorial. We're going to create one that opens out the exact same way as these two. So for that project, you need 11 pieces. You need 11 pages, but they're single pages. So there's no folds, they're just single pages. And again, mine's going to be 3 by 4 inches, but yours can be any size that you want. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to cut out 11 pieces or 11 pages that are 3 inches wide by 4 inches tall. And if you don't have a paper trimmer, you don't need one to measure your pages. You can do it with a ruler, you can do it with a pencil, you can do it with scissors. So I have now cut out 11 sheets of paper or 11 pages that are 3 by 4 inches. Again, if you want to, you can get fancy. You can pick all different types of pages and you can make it feel really junk journal-y. But I've got my 11 pages and then I've got my cover that's 1/2 inch taller and 1/2 inch wide. So you can see it's a little bit bigger. Now it's as simple as assembling the pages and then sticking them together with glue basically. So what I did when I created my first one was I used the prototype with the washi tape. I opened it out and I laid it out on my desk. I copied basically the layout and then I glued it in after. So I'll open this out and show you what I mean. So, because you could create your own layout that's different to mine if you want to. So this is the cover piece, this piece here. And then what I did was I created one little fold out piece like this and then another fold out piece like this, so 2 separate, and then I attached them to the cover last. So what I did was I took the pages and I copied. So we'll have our cover piece, we'll have a piece that folds down below it, and then we'll have a page that folds out beside it. Then we'll have another page that folds out below that one, and then it's going to fold out to the side twice, and then it's going to fold up once. So that's the layout of that piece. And then once we've stuck it all together, it will attach to the cover right here. And then the other side will fold out from this side twice. And then it's going to fold down twice, and then this page is going to fold out to the side here. So it's kind of like a puzzle. It doesn't have to be like this. You can just do something that's different to mine. So it's as easy as just taking this and going, well, I want mine to open up an extra way this way, or I want mine to just open all the way down like this, or I want mine to open up twice here and have a little foldy thing happening here, or I want another piece here that folds out, and I want another piece up here that folds out. It's completely up to you, and that's where you can have a lot of fun with assembling your book, because it can fold out in so many different ways. And you could literally take tape and you could tape all of these pages together to fold out. You could use washi tape if you wanted to. So that's what I did with my prototype. I just used washi tape to test out the idea. But for the actual project, I wanted it to be a little bit more permanent, a little bit more strong. And so I'm using glue and I'm using paper to stick the pages together, and that's what we're going to do in this tutorial. So to do that, we're basically just going to create our own pieces of washi tape with paper, and we're going to glue them together to create little strips. So you can take any type of paper to be your washi tape. I think it's best not to use paper that's too thick or too thin, because if it's too thick, your folds are going to become really bulky, and if it's too thin, they may not be strong enough. But I would say you'd probably prefer it to be on the thinner side. What I did for my book was I just took a ruler and I took my paper and I created little strips just like this, like my own little strips of tape. And I think it actually looks better if they're not too perfect, so you don't have to make this super neat and tidy. And then basically we're going to have little strips in between each fold like this. And I put one strip of paper on the front and one strip on the back. I'm going to create a couple of strips with this paper so that I have plenty on hand. And you can make them as thick or as thin as you like, but one thing to keep in mind is that obviously the thicker these strips are, the more area they're going to take up on your actual pages. So it just depends what kind of look you're going for. If you intend on covering them up later with other papers, it just depends what you want to do. What I did was I took those strips of paper and I basically just tore them down to create strips that were similar in size. So I created 2 little strips for each fold, because I'm going to have one on the back and one on the front to make sure it's strong. And you can make them as tall as your fold, as tall as your page, or you can make them smaller. And I'm just laying them on each little piece to make sure that I've got enough, basically. And I'm not going to bother with the one that's going to attach all of this to the actual cover. Same with this spot here. I'm just going to do the pages first. Now we've basically got all of our pieces. I'm going to work in 2 lots. So I've got this lot here and this lot here. I'm just going to put one of these aside with the cover, and we're just going to work with one at a time. It's going to be a little bit more manageable. Now I'm just going to use my wet PVA glue. This goes on white, but it dries clear. It's quite a strong glue. You could just use a glue stick or something like that, but it may not be strong enough. So I think it's best to use a stronger glue if you have one. I'm going to take these first 2 pages here, and my 2 little strips, and I'm going to just put some glue on the first strip, spread it with my glue brush, and I want to make sure I go all the way to the edge of the strip just to make sure there's enough glue on there. And then take the first page and we're going to attach it pretty much halfway onto the strip. And then we're going to take our other page and we're going to glue it on the other half, but we're going to leave a gap in the middle because that's going to give us a bit more folding room. So it's going to give us a bit more flexibility in the book. And the more room you leave, the more give and the more bulk you can add to your book, because it'll have that bit more space to fold out and to add more things, if that makes sense. So just gluing those 2 together, making sure they're glued down really well. And then I like to take another piece and add it on the front. And it's as simple as that. Then the next page is connected beside it. So I'm going to take the next page, my 2 little strips that I prepared, and this is going to be attached here. So again, we're going to do the same thing. Take our next page and just repeat the process, making sure to leave a gap for folding. And we want our pages to line up pretty well as well. We don't want it to be all out of whack, because then when we fold it on itself, it's going to get stuck. So we want it to be pretty tidy. So now we've got 3 pages together, then we're going to take our next one. So our next one goes here. Our next page goes up here, and then we'll have another page that comes off the side like this. If you do have your strips hanging off the edge like I've got here, you can always just cut that excess off as well. So this is the first part, and I would recommend just leaving this to dry completely before you even start folding it. So before you fold it in on itself, just leave it to dry for a while so that it can be as strong as possible. So put that one aside, and then we'll work on the next one, which folds out in a different way. This one opens out from our cover to the side. So we have our cover, and then we have 2 pieces that come out to the side. Then we have 2 pieces that come down, and then our last piece, our extra piece that folds out here. So this kind of shape. Yours doesn't have to be the same, but this is just the way that I'm going to show you. So I'm going to start by sticking these 2 pieces together. So 2 out to the side and then 2 down like this. So 2 across, 2 down, and then we have our extra piece, our last piece that comes off the side here. Or if you wanted to, it could come off the side here or here or here or here. It's completely up to you, but again, I'm just going to do the same. So now we have our 2 fold out pieces or sides of the book. So they're 2 different ways that they're going to fold. I need to let both of these dry completely before we attach it to the cover. Okay, I've left these to dry for a while, and I've come back, and now it should be fine to fold. So I'm going to fold these in, and just going to try and keep them neat. So we kind of want our pages to sit on top of each other pretty flush, but we are going to have, there's some room for error, so it's okay if this isn't perfect. But if your pages sit on top of each other neatly, it will fold easier, so it won't get caught on itself. It won't bulk up in the wrong places. So far so good. This one folds in and then up. And then when we attach this, it will fold up into the book, something like that. And then this one's going to fold in this way. So we've got a piece here that's going to sit there. We've got a piece here that's going to sit like that. And then it's going to fold up here. And then in. And then this too is going to fold in. So it'll be something like that. And then once it's attached, the book will close. The next step is to attach the pages to the cover, and I'll show you this one. So this was the other little plain one that I did. I found that when I was attaching the pages to the actual cover, it was best to use something a little stronger, because if you think about it, this fold here is holding the weight of all of these pages, and this fold here is holding the weight of all of these pages. So this fold here is doing the most work. If you lift it up whilst everything is attached, these folds are holding the most weight. So they need something a little bit stronger than paper. What I did with this one was I did paper on the back, and then I added a strip of lace on the inside. This strip of lace here is adding so much strength to this fold here. It's super, super strong. And then the same sort of thought with the second fold. So the second fold for this side is here, and the second fold for this side is here. And because they're opening up a different way, this one's going up, this one's going down. They're the first fold that's changing direction. I feel like there's a bit more pressure on those as well. So to make those a little bit stronger also, I did just use the paper, but then I glued a little strip of fabric tape over the top of just one side of those folds as well. So that it adds decoration, but it also adds some strength. So for this attachment here where the page attaches to the cover, and this one here where the page attaches to the cover, I'm gonna give it a bit more strength. I might even just use the offcuts from cutting out the pages. So I had some slightly shorter pieces that I could use to attach these pages on. I think once I do that with paper, then I'll go in with some fabric over the top or some lace like I did with that other example that I just showed you. So let's just go through this together. So I'm going to take bits of paper. These are already kind of right size because they were my offcuts from the pages. I'm just going to tear them in half so that they're not as big. So this will be one strip for the front and another strip for the back, and then I'm going to do the same over here. This time I'm going to fold it long ways. I'm going to make these pretty much the same size as the pages, so the same height or the same width. And then I'm going to take my page where it attaches and I'm going to glue the page down. And then I'm going to take the cover and I'm going to glue the cover. I'm going to give myself a slightly wider gap this time, just so that gap, if you can imagine, once you fold up all of these pages, it's going to be a little bit thicker. It's going to be all of the pages together. So I'm giving myself a little bit of extra room to accommodate the thickness of all the pages together. Always go in with your little bone folder tool if you have one, and just make sure that it's stuck. Then let that dry, but whilst that's drying, I'm going to go ahead and repeat the process for the other side. I'm going to just leave slightly more space. And this is also why it's important to make our cover a little bit bigger than the pages, because there's no exact measurement with the spaces that we're leaving in between each page. And by the time it folds back together into itself, it can stick out and it can be a little bit wider or a little bit taller. So making the cover that little bit bigger just accommodates for that extra space. So now our pages are attached to the cover. This is still very wet and needs to dry. I've only just glued it together, so I'm not going to fold it yet. I'm going to let it dry first. But you can start thinking about how you want to decorate your cover. So this is your inside cover, and then the back is the outside. So for this one, this is actually paper towel. So I just took some plain white paper towel, I glued it over the outside cover, so I just had the book folded up, and I had it laying down on the desk like this. I glued on a piece of paper towel and I put glue over the top, and I let it dry actually overnight because paper towel is really fragile. And then once it was completely dry, I painted a layer of brown paint. And then once that was completely dry, I glued on some little pieces of tea bag paper. Did like little patches on the cover, just kind of at random. And I love how it looks so distressed and interesting. And then this little piece of fabric is just a pocket that I added onto one of the pages. And instead of cutting off the excess, I just glued it over the edge, over the folds, and it actually adds some strength here as well to the book. That was one cover idea that you could try. And this one was simple as well. So I started off again with the manila folder cover. I used some distress inks from Ranger, and I just spread like some brown, I think vintage photo or gathered twigs, over the cover, both the back and the front, so on the inside as well. Kind of used it like paint a little bit, used a bit of water to help spread it. And then I left that to dry overnight. And then the next day I came in and I glued again the tea bag paper on the outside cover. So there's like 3 pieces of tea bag paper on the outside cover, so it just ends here. And I just glued it with wet glue, and you can kind of see how the inks have run through with the glue. So it's given it, again, a really kind of distressed look to this, and it's also added a bit of strength as well. And then on the inside, I didn't glue the tea bag paper, so this is just the ink. On the inside of this one, I glued actually a whole sheet of paper. So this is some music paper, some vintage music paper. I glued it all the way across the cover. I kind of pieced a piece of scrapbook paper on the edge just to make it go the distance. And then once that was dry, I also stitched in a pocket. So this is one big pocket here. So that's just like lining the inside of the book, and you can easily do that with yours. So you would just take a piece of scrapbook paper or whatever you have, and you can just glue it all the way over the top. And when you glue it down, you would actually cover up these strips of paper where we bound the pages into the cover. So this would all get covered up, and it would also give a little bit of extra strength as well because it's glued, it's like sandwiched in the middle, so it's not going to come off. So you can line the inside, you can do the same on the outside as well. Use fabric or you can use paint. But I am going to go ahead and I'm going to decorate the outside and the inside cover. I just got a little scrap of music paper. And then for the outside, I've just got this piece of fabric that I'm going to use. And I'm just going to glue both of these down. And then obviously this piece is larger than what I need. So all I'll have to do once I stick this down is flip it over and cut off the excess. I've glued it so that I don't need to cut the two edges where the pages are attached. So it's already flush along these edges because it would be pretty tricky to cut around these pages. If you had pages coming off every side, you just have to measure and cut this to be the right size before you glue it down. Flip the whole thing over and I'm going to cut off the excess, or you could just take the paper and you could just fold it over and glue it down. Then this side is the outside cover. I'm going to flip this around the right way. I just picked some fabric and I'm just going to do the same thing. I'm just going to glue the fabric over the cover. So there's the outside cover and then this will be the inside cover. And as I mentioned before, I want to add a little bit of strength to these folds. So I'm also going to glue a little strip of lace on these folds as well. So I'm going to leave this to dry. Whilst I'm waiting for this to dry, I will show you all of the extra things that I added to get a more detailed look. The first thing I added, after I lined the cover, I added a pocket. And if you're handy on a sewing machine, you can actually still get this entire book through your sewing machine just by folding the pages into themselves to make it more easy to get it through. And what I did on this little section was I just added a pocket, and again I sewed this. So I put this through the sewing machine after everything was assembled. So I sewed on a little bit of scrapbook paper to create a pocket here, and I used staples to create like a little tuck spot here, and just some glue along that edge there. And on the back of this piece here, I added a little paper bag pocket. So I just stapled that in. So you can always just staple stuff as well. Then when this folds over, you've got that pocket, or it's kind of the first thing that you see. Then this page here, I haven't done anything with this page yet, but you could add literally anything you want. And then it folds down again. This is another page that I've not done anything on. So this was actually the base page, this scrapbook paper. And you could write in here, you could staple stuff, whatever you want. You can use it like a regular page. Then we have another fold here. So for my bottom page, I ended up folding it up into itself and I stapled it to create a little pocket. So this just made a shorter page. And this is another variation you can consider with this project. I've kept all of our pages the exact same size as each other because it just creates the most simple version. But if you wanted to get really complicated with it, you could have some shorter pages and some longer pages, and it would look really interesting because you'd have a lot of variation. I folded it up, stapled it to create a pocket here, and then I glued this little envelope on the back. So you've got like a little mini pocket on the back. And then for this fold here, I actually kind of turned it into a notebook. So I glued this is an embossed piece of card that I had painted and added some gold to, and then I added an eyelet so that it looks like a little journal cover. 2 pages of craft paper, folded them in half, and then I stapled them in to this fold, and this fold acts like a notebook cover. So you can actually write in here, you can stick photos in, you can treat it just like a little notebook, and then in the back of the notebook, add photos, you could add pockets, whatever you want. I just added a little strip of washi tape. And then so this fold can either fold inside like that, or it can fold over the top. It's up to you. So then this folds in on itself, and then the other side of the book folds down. So on this page here, I don't really have anything going on, but I have added some stitching. So I sewed this across to create a pocket. So we've got a pocket here, and then this is also a pocket on this side, but I do have a staple coming through from something I've added on the back. And then on this piece here, I did like a double pocket. So this is some scrapbook paper and then like a piece of vellum. And then on the back is actually this piece. So this piece, once it's folded up, this is the first thing you see on this side. And this is one of those Tim Holtz like cabinet cards. and it's quite a thick chipboard piece, so I actually split it to make it thinner, and you can slip a photo inside there. So that's what's on the back of this page. And to attach this, I glued it around 3 edges, and then I also added some staples just to make sure it was really, really secure. Then down the bottom here, we've got more folds. So these are our original 3 folds along the bottom. And then we also had a fold that came along the top here. So for mine, the paper that I had here was a piece of vintage ledger. And I decided to fold this in half so that it's like a little fold out page that you can journal on. On this page, I glued an envelope which fit really, really well. So I glued it directly down, and then on the back side, this little piece of vintage paper, I just stapled along the top and along the bottom to create like a belly band piece, so like a pocket that you can stick stuff into, just slip it in. I sewed a little piece of scrapbook paper here as a pocket, so there's another pocket there. Again, you can get every single page through your sewing machine. You just have to fold the rest of the book up in a way that you can kind of easily manage it. On the back, I actually glued a vintage postcard that had, it was like a folding postcard, gluing the inside face down. So this is actually the front of the postcard, which I've put on the inside, and then this is the back of it, if that makes sense. So it's like a card, like an actual card. And I just glued it directly down, and then this is like a little fold out, which you could stick stuff inside. So like you could slip little photos in here, and you could put like a little paper clip, or you could write in here, you could glue stuff down. It just gives you that little bit of extra room. So there's so many options for what you can do, what you can add to make it really interesting. So you don't have to add any pockets at all if you don't want to. I could come in with paint and I could draw and paint in here. I could just add photos. I think like little Instax photos would fit really nicely in here, which could be really, really cute as well. I could add a pocket here on the inside cover. You don't have to fill it up with pockets either. You can use it like an art journal. So it's actually the next day. I let my little book dry overnight. I didn't do the best glue job, and I kind of just let it sit and I didn't look at it again. So it's formed some air bubbles in the cover. Still feels nice and soft, but anyway. But I wanted to show you how this turned out aside from that. So this is the little folding book all finished. I wanted to let it dry overnight because I wanted to let these little strips of lace dry completely so that I could fold them. And you can feel the strength in these. It's so much stronger with the lace on the inside now for those folds, so it can really hold the weight of the book. Now we have our little folding book, like little expanding book, which is going to be so much fun to fill up with stuff. And I should have said before, if you don't want the little strips where you've glued the pages together to be so noticeable, you can always just use the exact same paper that you use for the pages. So I had plenty of tea-dyed paper I could have used to glue these together so that it was less obvious. But I quite like this look, and that's what I did for my other 2 books. I'm just looking at it now and thinking maybe I should have done something different. You can keep adding to it. You can add more fold outs in different places. You can try a completely different variation to what I've done here. I'll probably put some more fabric or something over the top with my sewing machine because of these air bubbles, but it's still cute. It feels nice in my hands. So now I have 3 of these little guys. They all have a bit of a vintage vibe, and I can use them all in different ways. If you have any ideas, if this has sparked any inspiration for you, I really hope you have a lot of fun putting one together for yourself. And if you have any additional ideas to share, you can always leave them down in the comments below. So I really hope you enjoyed this tutorial. If you have any questions, you can pop them in the comments down below. If you did enjoy this video, I would appreciate it so much if you could pop a thumbs up on this video. It helps my channel so much. I hope you're all doing really well, and I will see you again soon in my next video.